You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Friday, October 23rd, 2015, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. We made it to the weekend, folks, and that means we are just 11 days away from legalizing marijuana in the state of Ohio. Very exciting times for Ohioans down there. There's a whole bunch of new stories on it. Rolling Stone has weighed in on the battle for weed in Ohio that has pitted longtime marijuana reformers on the same side as longtime marijuana prohibitionists. Why, just today, Kevin Sabet retweeted a tweet that quotes Don E. Wirtschafter, a longtime Ohio marijuana reformer, and they're in agreement. They're both against Issue 3. That's right. You've got people that have worked their entire life to legalize marijuana passing up this opportunity because, doggone it, the wrong people are going to get rich. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about that today because Don E. Wirtschafter has posted an op-ed in the Athens, Ohio News that demands a rebuttal. So coming up in our Behind the Headlines, we're going to show you how Don E. Wirtschafter is out and out lying to you about Issue 3 in Ohio. We'll follow that up with some Reefer Madness debunked, showing why Don E. Wirtschafter's doomsday predictions for how awful life would be after people are legal to have marijuana in Ohio are complete bunk. That's coming up in our Reefer Madness debunked segment. And then we've got a whole bunch of guests on today's show. Coming up in the Half Past segment for our Reformers Reader, we're going to speak with Joshua Sheets. He's the author of a new book called Homegrown Marijuana. Love to learn more about home growing as that becomes more and more legal across this country, even in the state of Ohio. And then at the end of the show, we will have time for an activist agenda. We're going to be speaking with researcher John Hudak, who's authored a new paper on ending the U.S. government's war on medical marijuana research. It's just unconscionable that our government, while it has patents on the medical use of cannabinoids, refuses to allow private researchers to move forward with that. And then in hour 2, Toker Talk Radio for our live listeners, we're going to be calling out to Boston, Massachusetts. Jeannie Sorrow got in touch with me, says she's got some big news about Boston's mayor. So we're going to talk to her in the second hour. We'll also take your live calls at 84-420 radio. That's 844-207-2346, toll free on the North American continent. Herb Thrasher will be calling in at 4:20 for our Rockin' Friday Daily Toker Tunes break. And make sure you tune in tonight, 8 o'clock on the Herb Thrasher Flower Hour Live. We've got Herb Thrasher's interview with Guar. That's right. Herb Thrasher survived a Guar show, and he's lived to tell about it. He'll talk about that tonight at 8 o'clock on the Herb Thrasher Flower Hour. But coming up next, right after the break, we've got the 420 radio news. And in the headlines today, Washington State looking at $1 billion worth of marijuana commerce. Christian Baker in South Africa fighting for the constitutional right to use dacha. We've got marijuana store rules being promulgated by the Oregon Liquor Control Commission to tell you about. We've got another rebuke of that claim that marijuana problems have doubled in a decade. A look at the timeline for legalization in Canada under the Liberal Party, and another city in Michigan that'll be voting on marijuana decriminalization in just 11 days. It's all coming up next on The Russ Belville Show.
You're tuned into The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
420 Radio, turning red states and blue states green.
I'm Nick Lachey. Ohio is my home, and I care very deeply about the people here, which is why I'm proud to be a part of a movement that's going to create jobs, reinvigorate our economy, and improve the safety of our communities.
It'll give me a chance to open a business or a job to pay off my college loans. And legalizing marijuana will provide tax revenue for local safety services. Let's do what the politicians haven't done. For marijuana legalization, vote no on 2 and yes on 3.
Imagine life without taxes. Let New Era Certified Public Accountants, NewEraCPAs.com, handle your Cannabis 280E and tax strategy. Get your business prepared with New Era CPA's Cannabis Finance Bootcamp. NewEraCPAs.com, with years of experience in the industry, we are one of the nation's leading accounting firms for growers, dispensaries, and ancillary companies from Washington to California. NewEraCPAs.com. It's time for the 420 Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Replays of 420 Radio News are embeddable and shareable from our SoundCloud page at soundcloud.com/RadicalRuss. Now, the marijuana headlines in 4 minutes and 20 seconds. This is your 420 Radio News for Friday, October 23rd, 2015. Washington State expects marijuana sales taxes to bring in more than $1 billion over the next 4 years, according to a budget forecast published by the Office of Financial Management. In the first year since legalizing both medical and recreational cannabis, Washington collected $67.5 million in marijuana-related taxes directed toward its general fund and health-related services. This year, the state expects to pull in $154.6 million. As of September 30th, 3 months into the state's fiscal year, Washington has already collected $37.6 million, said Steve Lurch, executive director and chief economist for the state's Economic and Revenue Forecast Council. Through 2019, Lurch expects marijuana-related revenue to increase each year and anticipates collecting $267 million in 2017, $333 million in 2018, and $369 million in 2019, according to official budget projections published in September. Christian Baker is the latest member of the Dakha Party of South Africa to challenge the constitutionality of marijuana prohibition in the nation of 53 million people. Dakha is the South African term for cannabis, or marijuana in North America. Baker, age 23, successfully argued before a provincial court to have his charges stayed in the lower township court for Dakha dealing and possession. He now has 60 days to present his defense to the nation's constitutional court. Baker argues that, quote, "I have been smoking Dakha for years without harm. I sometimes eat it for its known medical benefits and part of my own spiritual beliefs and practice. I eat the seeds as part of my diet and as a health supplement due to research into the medical benefits and economic potential of cannabis," end quote. And that Dakha prohibition is in violation of the UN Declaration of Human Rights that is a part of the South African Constitution. Marijuana stores will be prohibited from selling both recreational and medical marijuana, and pot cannot be used on site under preliminary regulations approved Thursday by the Oregon Liquor Control Commission. The commission's rules will limit the size of growing operations to 10,000 square feet indoors and 40,000 square feet outdoors. The rules also require marijuana businesses to be owned in the majority by people who have lived in Oregon for more than 2 years. That's to comply with a law approved by the legislature earlier this year, but key lawmakers from both parties have since said they'd like to reconsider the rule. The OLCC's proposed rules also will allow marijuana deliveries. However, they'll be subject to such tough restrictions that the commissioner said it would be uneconomical for delivery to be a significant part of anyone's business. Delivery vehicles, for example, couldn't have more than $100 of marijuana at a time. Recent reports claim that marijuana use and marijuana problems have doubled in the past decade, but according to the data, during the period when about a dozen states legalized marijuana for medical use, several decriminalized possession of small amounts, and 2 legalized marijuana for recreational use, cannabis consumers became less likely to abuse the drug. Between 2002 and 2012, according to the figures cited by the reports, the prevalence of marijuana use disorders among cannabis consumers fell by 17%. From 15% to 12.5%. As more states legalize marijuana during the next decade, it seems reasonable to predict that the percentage of cannabis consumers who experience problems as a result of their marijuana use will continue to decline. With the Liberal Party of Canada sweeping into office Monday, a second country seems ready to legalize the sale of marijuana. The Liberals' surprise victory dethroned Canada's Conservative leader Stephen Harper, who had been in office almost a decade. His replacement, Prime Minister-elect Justin Trudeau, stated just last month that pot legalization was a goal that he'd, quote, get started on, end quote, right away if elected. That means Canada will join Uruguay as the second country to legalize and regulate the sale of the drug. Quote, oh, it's going to happen, end quote, Canadian Senator Larry Campbell of the Liberal Party, a former mayor of Vancouver, told the U.S. News, quote, certainly within the next 4 years, but I suspect a closer time frame is 2 years, end quote. Portage, Michigan voters will decide if they want to be the next city to decriminalize small amounts of marijuana. A charter amendment on the ballot asks to decriminalize 1 ounce of possession for those over the age of 21. This has been your 420 Radio News for Friday, October 23rd, 2015. I'm Russ Belville.
The Russ Belville Show. We're as much like Cheech and Chong as ordinary Americans are like the Three Stooges. Hey, Mo!
Yo, it's Kasky. I'm out here in Columbus, Ohio, letting y'all know that coming up November 3rd, we got a chance to legalize pot in Ohio. Huge step for the country, for the state. So I need everybody to get off your ass and go vote yes on issue 3, November 3rd. Don't be lazy. Let's make our country better. Let's make our people better. Start healing each other. Make the world a better place. Issue 3.
The Russ Belville Show is proudly sponsored by the Marijuana Business Association. The MJBA, called by NBC News the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, is the fastest growing business association in the fastest growing industry in America. I've been working with the MJBA for years, and I personally invite you to join the MJBA. MJBA also publishes the popular MJ Headline News on Facebook and the MJNewsNetwork.com and Marijuana Channel 1 on YouTube. Visit mjba.net for more details. Today in Behind the Headlines, I want to take a look at a op-ed that was just posted in the Athens News, Athens, Ohio. The Athens News, that's what it's called. And it comes from Don E. Wertschafter. And bless his heart, Don Wertschafter has been a long-time activist, goes back to the days of the Yippies. And I see him every year at the Seattle Hemp Fest, where he is usually the MC of the Hemposium stage. I saw him most recently here in Portland at the Oregon Hemp Convention, where he had to let me know to my face that he thought my opinion on issue 3 was utter bullshit. And that's fine. I like disagreement. I have no problem disagreeing with people. And that's what I'm going to do right now in disagreeing with Don Wertschafter's op-ed entitled, Anyone Who Likes Marijuana Should Hate Issue 3. And what tipped me off to this was the fact that Kevin Sabet retweeted a tweet from an anti-drug group that quoted Don Wertschafter. So when Kevin Sabet is retweeting you for his side, that's a sign. And the fact is that when it comes to this issue 3 and this editorial he wrote, he's just now blatantly lying about issue 3. And some of the same lies I heard 3 years ago with the No on I-502 crowd that Don also sympathized with. And right out of the gate, he starts his op-ed with what I call the illegal non-store ounce lie. Same thing the I-502 people said. Don writes, quote, if issue 3 passes and you're caught on the street carrying anything other than sealed packets of the cartel's inferior factory-grown product, today's harsh laws will still apply, end quote. Which, okay, so it wouldn't be any worse than it is now. Okay. And it's a nearly identical prophecy to No on I-502's Steve Elliott, who wrote, quote, unless you bought that ounce at a state-licensed store, you'd still be busted, end quote. What was the result of that prediction 3 years ago? Well, not only has nobody in Washington state been busted for possession of a non-store ounce, 63% fewer prosecutions for all marijuana crimes have transpired in Washington since passing I-502. Not only did the less than an ounce people avoid police, so did many of the more than an ounce people, since the smell of weed is no longer probable cause.
And that's in a state that doesn't allow home grow. Issue 3 will allow home grow in Ohio. So, how is the police officer supposed to know that the quarter ounce in the baggie in your pocket isn't A, your homegrown marijuana, B, a friend's homegrown marijuana that he's legally allowed to share with you, or C, store-bought marijuana that was taken out of the package and shared with the person holding it? Issue 3 doesn't legalize store-bought marijuana. It legalizes marijuana, period. You can look it up yourself. The amendment says, quote, "It is lawful for persons 21 years of age or older to purchase, possess, transport, use, and share with another person 21 years of age or older 1 ounce or less of marijuana or its equivalent in marijuana-infused products," end quote. Did I mention store-bought in its original packaging anywhere in there? No, because it's not in there. As a lawyer, Don, you just committed a breach of ethics by mischaracterizing or just flat out lying about what the language of this amendment will do. Just think about it, though. He tries to justify this by saying, oh, well, the Ohio Supreme Court said you couldn't transport your homegrown marijuana, and it'll have to be in a sealed container, because if it's not in a sealed container, then you could put your homegrown marijuana in an old package from the store to try to get away with it being store-bought. Really, the tortured logic you have to try to accept for this to be a realistic scare is just hilarious to me. The law itself says people 21 years of age or older can possess and share 1 ounce or less. If I go to the store and buy some marijuana and it comes to me in a 1 ounce package, and I have the legal right to share some of that with another person, an amount less than 1 ounce with another person, how are the two of us going to possess our weed when there's only one store package? This whole idea about the store package would be impossible if you're allowed to share, and if less than 1 ounce is able to be possessed. There is no logical consistency in this fear-mongering about the non-store ounce. It was as much a fear-mongering lie in Washington State under I-502's Stoners Against Legalization as it is now in 2015 with Ohio's Stoners Against Legalization. It's just not true, and it's such a shame for someone that should know better to try to make this scare merely because he's upset about who's getting rich in the growing industry. This is really about growers who want to get rich, people.
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?
I am thinking of the children. I'm thinking of all the people of Ohio who are treated like criminals by their state. Harassed and fined and arrested and ticketed and incarcerated and items seized and children taken over this war on marijuana that we have an opportunity to end in just 11 days. Don't let me down, Ohio. I'll see you there.
Marijuana is not addictive, but listening to the Russ Belville Show is.
The Fingerboard extension has fretted instruments to enhance your creativity. It has new and used guitars and banjos from beginning to high class. The Fingerboard extension has National Resophonic, Husson Dalton, Larrabee, Heritage and Recording King guitars, and Mike Ramsey, Wildwood, Gold Tone, and Recording King banjos. The Fingerboard extension also has drum stuff, used gear, and parts. Stop by the Fingerboard extension, downtown Corvallis, Oregon at 120 Northwest 2nd, or check out the inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com and reverb.com. Get.Buzz. .Buzz is the internet platform that fuels community interest, excitement, and new experiences. .Buzz is the premier online destination for internet users seeking the latest news on a variety of topics. .Buzz appeals to groups active in blogging, communications, journalism, advertising, and marketing. .Buzz offers registrants a stronger alternative to the shrinking namespace of existing top-level domain names, such as .com, .net, and .org. Get your name now at get.buzz.
Marijuana is an addictive drug which produces in its users insanity, criminality, and death. Marijuana is the most violence-causing drug in the history of mankind. If the hideous monster Frankenstein came face-to-face with the monster of marijuana, he dropped dead from fright.
You know, it's not easy countering 7 decades of propaganda in a 2-hour show, but let's try. It's time for the Russ Belville Show's Reefer Madness Debunked.
Welcome back, folks. And I usually save this segment for the prohibitionists who hate marijuana. But since we've got people who like marijuana voting on the same side of the prohibitionists, I'm going to debunk their reefer madness as well. And it's this reefer madness that supposes somehow the world becomes a much worse place if we legalize marijuana the wrong way. We heard about this with No on I-502 in 2012, that terrible things would happen if marijuana were legalized, most of which have not come true, and the ones that did come true aren't the fault of legalizing marijuana. And now we've got this in Ohio, where the issue 3 stands to legalize marijuana in just 11 days. And the fear, of course, here is that we have a corporate cartel monopoly, oligopoly, whatever they're going to call it, that's going to be running the growing, and therefore legalization will be worse than what they have today. This continues on an op-ed from Don E. Wirtschafter, who continues painting this nightmare scenario of corporate marijuana unleashed that really bears little resemblance to the reality of the large factory grows currently operating in Washington and Colorado. It's something I like to call the corporate marijuana will suck prediction. He says, quote, Issue 3 will supply Ohioans with factory-grown swag. Profit-motivated Issue 3 backers are planning to grow in huge, very likely bug, mold, and mildew-prone factories. They will be miserable places to work in. With only second-class products available in the stores, the black market for quality products will continue to thrive. The result will be continuing arrests and spiraling costs of enforcement. End quote. Geez, doom and gloom. And I remember when I heard something similar from No on I-502 Steve Sarich, who wrote, quote, if you're happy to pay $600 to $700 an ounce for legal state swag to help fund social services like more law enforcement to enforce this new law, then just come right out and admit it. End quote. Folks, I've toured some of the largest industrial grows in Washington and Colorado. I've never seen happier employees and cleaner grows. I've smoked their so-called factory-grown swag, and it's dynamite. It's truly a feat of logical contortion to fearmonger about the schemers who are all about the money, who would then set up substandard operations to produce an inferior product that would be beaten out by the black market and the thousands of home growers, and then blow their investment. That makes a whole lot of sense. No, the real fear Wirtschafter is voicing is that of the black market growers who know they cannot compete with the price, selection, and quality of a legalized market. Even in Colorado and Washington, getting into the growing at scale game takes a lot of money. At least Wirtschafter is honest about the amendment initially establishing grow rights for 10 properties, not 10 growers. The whole 10 growers deceit has been difficult to maintain since many of the landowners have signed agreements to lease parcels for independent growers. Oh, and then Wirtschafter's op-ed follows with the "it's etched in granite" warning, which is always funny when we're talking about an amendment. He says, quote, the Ohio legislature has no power to repair the onerous provisions of this power grab. The only way to fix issue 3 is another constitutional amendment. End quote. Okay, so the legislature somehow has no power to fix issue 3 after 2015, but somehow this year they had the power to put up issue 2, a constitutional amendment on the ballot to completely invalidate issue 3. Okay, so what then is stopping the legislature in 2016 from putting forth an amendment to fix issue 3? Oh, wait, I got it. The power of the monopoly. Wirtschafter writes, quote,
With Issue 3's backers making their projected hundreds of millions of dollars per year, they will be able to spend whatever is necessary to prevent Ohio citizens from removing their stranglehold over Ohio's production. End quote. Okay, so the money-grubbing cartel, which is losing money hand over fist because people would rather buy non-pesticide, non-bug, non-mildew, non-schwag from the black market, they're going to spend massive amounts of money to keep the stranglehold that they don't have because the black market's beating them. And the people who hate this arrangement will be swayed by their ad buys. Okay. Whatever. And then there's the only that much marijuana, that's not enough ploy. This is where Wirtschafter argues that Ohio's Issue 3's quote, 4 plants and 8 ounces is not enough, end quote. And that getting a license to home grow, you'll be forced to, quote, grant permission for government inspections of their homes, end quote. Nothing about the amendment authorizes home inspections. Rather, it requires that, quote, homegrown marijuana is not grown or consumed within public view, and that home growing takes place in an enclosed locked space inaccessible to persons under the age of 21, end quote. Finally, Wirtschafter tries to weakly bat away the fact that Issue 3 will provide relief for hundreds of thousands of medical marijuana patients, with not only a medicine that won't be taxed and must be sold at the lowest wholesale cost, but with protections for administering medical marijuana at work that no other state provides. Wirtschafter intones, quote, Issue 3, pandering itself as medical, has split the pro-cannabis community. Some people are so desperate for freedom, they are willing to give up all their rights to a new master. End quote. Or maybe, just maybe, some parents are hoping the old school yippies don't blow this chance at getting some CBD oil for their dying epileptic daughter because the old school yippies are upset that winning elections costs money these days. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we've got Joshua Sheets, author of Homegrown Marijuana. Stay tuned.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. The Russ Belville Show reminds you to never smoke and drive impaired. Hang out for a while and share.
Hey everybody, it's Radical Russ here from 420 Radio, inviting you to be like me and get your ink done at Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo, Fort Worth's most female-friendly, clean, sterile, awesome tattoo shop. Thomas and his crew are true artists who can design you a custom piece or use a design you bring in. Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo also offers all styles of tattooing as well as piercings and all-around fun. In the DFW area, stop by Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo and tell them Radical Russ sent you. Trust me, it'll feel awesome.
As a police officer, I walked the beat, served on the Vice Squad and SWAT team, and became an expert on drug addiction. I saw firsthand the effects of Ohio's destructive marijuana laws. Simply put, they don't work. Ohio spends over $100 million each year on this failed effort. It's time for marijuana reform, so law enforcement can spend their time cracking down on real criminals and making Ohio a safer place for our families. Vote yes on 3.
The best weapon you can have in the Prohibition War is your mind. Fill your head with the knowledge you need by checking out this latest entry in the Russ Belville Show's Reformer's Reader.
Welcome back, everybody. Today in the Reformer's Reader, we're going to be speaking with Joshua Sheets. He is the author of a new book entitled Homegrown Marijuana, and we've gotten a copy mailed to us, taking a look at the book, and it's a great reference for people who are just getting involved. He's an award-winning nurseryman and a Washington-based cannabis grower, both on the small scale and the large scale, has worked as a professional horticulturist and a consultant who works with one of the largest and most successful nurseries in Washington state. Homegrown Marijuana is his first title,
But as Sheets points out, this is comprehensive. You can buy the book, find seed, follow instructions, and have incredibly high-quality marijuana. The book is available through Amazon.com. Just look for Homegrown Marijuana, Creating Hydroponic Growing at Amazon. And we're trying to get him on the line here, but does not seem to be answering on our line. So let me take a quick break, see if we can get him on the line and talk more about his book. You're listening to The Russ Belville Show.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. The Russ Belville Show, providing dictionaries to drug czars since 2009.
I know a thing or two about drug dealers. They'll sell anything, anywhere, to anyone. They don't check IDs. They don't care what's in the poison they push. They control the streets. Failing to reform marijuana laws means the drug dealers win. They stay in business, and we surrender our streets. It's time for responsible reform to legalize, regulate, and control marijuana. So we're in charge, not the criminals. Vote yes on 3.
All right, let's have our last speaker join us, Pamela Novi, your Executive Director of Virginia NORML.
See, Russ has the name that's on my publications and my resume, which is the name I use when I want to feel smarter or I'm in trouble. So you can call me Pam. Everyone can call me Pam. What I wanted to talk about today is, first of all, I've always been very interested in women in leadership roles, particularly having been in the military, spent 18 years in the military, in male-dominated fields and occupations. Since I became the director of Virginia NORML, one of the things that I've really tried to do is recruit more women, particularly for leadership positions. So today, part of what I want to do is highlight not only those women, but the other women who have been involved with Virginia NORML, who are here today. But before I do that, I'm taking a look around the room. Can all of the women please stand up? Everybody, every woman in the room. Yeah, this is much different than what you would have seen even a few years ago. So thank you all for coming. So I'm going to put some people on the spot. I want them to come stand up here with me. Several folks. We'll start with Jen Michelle Pedini, who is I mentioned before, our deputy director. She's also one of the chapter directors for Richmond, and she has been just working like crazy to help get this conference off the ground. Tammy Mundy, where are you, Tammy? She does not hold an official leadership position on the board, but Brian Mundy, who is their Jefferson area chapter director, says every time I talk to him that he could not be doing what he was doing if it was not for Tammy. And she's also recently, we learned that she knows how to do website stuff. I'm not even sure exactly what but she's really good at it. Jenny Morgan, where are you? Jenny Morgan is on our board of directors and has worked with National for quite a few, I'm not sure how many years actually, months. And I know she's been involved with the Nova NORML chapter. Heidi Miller, where's Heidi? Heidi recently, relatively recently, joined us from Roanoke, and the chapter in Roanoke was just started, 5 months ago, something like that, March. And she has really just gotten a very strong chapter going in Richmond. If you look at the Facebook page, they've had news articles, they're meeting with all kinds of legislators, they're doing a great job. Let's see, Peg, where's Peg? Peg is monitoring the door back there, and she's, so I'll let you off the hook so you can monitor the door, but that's Peg back there. She's our membership director and has been involved with Virginia Normal really since the beginning of a few years ago. Ed McCann, sort of our policy director, who was the previous director, revived Virginia Normal, and so Peg is one of the originals. Let's see. Vivian. Where are you, Vivian? So Vivian, let me dump my water down in front of me first. So Vivian's actually not on the board of directors for Virginia Normal, but I really want to tell you some things about Vivian. She is involved with the Jefferson area chapter and started a chapter of Republicans Against Marijuana Prohibition here in Virginia. Yeah. Vivian, is Nikki back there? Yeah, come on up here, Nikki. Vivian and Nikki Narduzzi, I always want to give her the wrong last name, have been really doing a lot of work talking to our Republican legislators, and Vivian and I have gone out together to meet with a number of the Republican legislators, and I can tell you, having two, mature women who have grown children go in to see a legislator definitely makes a different kind of impact than probably anybody else going in to see them. I mean, you can really see it in their face, and they listen in a different way. And part of the reason is women have a different, somewhat different message to deliver. So these two are awesome, and we're going to continue to be allies in this movement. Lennis, where's Lennis? Is she hiding in the back? So Lennis has been active. She's like the original woman of, of Virginia Normal. She has been active with Normal since the 70s and just keeps plugging away. I love to talk with a legislator when she's around because she has all the facts and figures and experience. And then Diane Holliday. Come on up here, Diane. Diane recently joined us. She came on her own to the legislative fly-in in D.C. We didn't even, we at Virginia Normal did not know about her until then, but she was so awesome. We pulled her in to be the secretary of the organization, and she helped get the new Culpeper County Normal chapter off the ground, which brings me to Heather and Kim. Come on up here, ladies. Heather Fossen and Kim Sadler. Kim is the director and Heather is the deputy director. Heather also works in the mental health field, so you should, if you get a chance to talk with her on the break, that would be great. But they they're going gangbusters already, and the Culpeper County chapter has really generated some news about a state senator we don't like very much that we'll talk about more tomorrow, but they're going to be key in that operation. So a couple of people who were not able to be here today who have also been leaders is Reva Harding from Fredericksburg. She's the Fredericksburg chapter director. Crystal Lewis, who is the Hampton Roads chapter director. She joined us just not too long ago, a few months ago. And then Clinique Williams, who is on our board of directors and has some physical issues going on, but she's not able to be here. And then, who else am I missing? June and Perrin. Stand up. Come on up here, ladies. June and Perrin are, they're not on our board of directors, but they're very, very active in the Nova Normal chapter. And June helps to keep Dwayne, who's our communications. That's right. That's right. And she does it. And so who have I forgotten? Have I forgotten anybody? Have I gotten? Jess, that was the last. I was saving her for last, actually. Jess, come on up here. Now, Jess, I want to say some extra special things about. Jess has been working with Shirts with a Purpose, who is one of our sponsors. She has single-handedly, at the downtown mall and several other tabling events, with the help of Shirts with a Purpose, and make sure you check out their merchandise in the back here. But she has made Virginia Normal, the presence in the Charlottesville area at the downtown mall, and it really just works tirelessly and always has excellent ideas, lots of input. So give these ladies a hand. All right, I'll let you go sit down now. So that was really, and I hope I didn't miss anyone out there. Of course, the ladies in the front here. So at this time, I'll turn it back over to Russ.
What do you think about issue 3?
It's a smart, safe plan. Like most states that legalize marijuana, it initially limits the number of growers for strict regulation before adding more. Plus, it puts drug dealers out of business. What about you?
Well, I like that Yes on 3 provides medical marijuana for those in need, and that might be me someday.
That's a regulated industry without creating a monopoly.
For medical marijuana, vote no on 2 and yes on 3.
In the interest of fair and balanced journalism, the Russ Belville Show presents the anti-drug public service announcement of the day.
Most high school juniors in Oregon don't use marijuana. Marijuana, it's not popular.
This has been the anti-drug public service announcement of the day. To cure this sort of reefer madness, listen to the Russ Belville Show every weekday on 420radio.org. This is Radical Russ encouraging you to take a look at the Weed Blog every day. Johnny Green and the staff at the Weed Blog are on top of all the latest developments in the fight to end marijuana prohibition nationwide. You can even get the Weed Blog on your smartphone by installing the Weed Blog app for iPhone and Android. If it's about weed, it's on the Weed Blog, including my original writing. So don't delay, read the Weed Blog today. 420 Radio. Tune in, turn on, get highly educated.
There's so much I worry about as a mom. Stephen Harper thinks that organized crime should continue to profit from marijuana prohibition. Imagine regulating marijuana like alcohol and cigarettes with a strong and clear educational message, making it more difficult for my kids and your kids to access. Drug dealers don't ask for ID. Stephen Harper does not have the kind of judgment we need to protect our children, authorized by the Normal Women's Alliance of Canada.
Activism begins with ACT. The Russ Belville Show features the stories of hardworking grassroots activists working for an end to prohibition in today's activist agenda.
All right, welcome back. For today's activist agenda, we are going to talk about research, specifically research on the medicinal uses of cannabis. And joining us to talk about that is John Hudak. He's a co-author of a paper for the Brookings Institute entitled Ending the U.S. Government's War on Medical Marijuana Research. John, welcome to the show.
Hey, Russ, thanks for having me back.
Great to have you here. And this war on medical marijuana, a lot of people, I mean, they get it at the general level of it's dumb that the government doesn't really allow us to study marijuana. And you can explain it to people that it's on Schedule 1, and so Schedule 1 drugs aren't studied. But can you tell our audience more in depth how marijuana is special even among the Schedule 1 drugs when it comes to research?
Well, everything you said is right, and I think for most people it's hard to even understand why marijuana is grouped with other Schedule 1 drugs in the first place. But then, like you said, it's treated differently. So, for instance, in order for a researcher in the United States to get research-grade marijuana, they can only get it from one source, one single farm at the University of Mississippi, where other Schedule 1 substances can be gotten from multiple outlets. And so that creates an extra institutional barrier that makes it harder for good faith researchers who want to study these questions just to get the product they need to do their work.
So if I'm a researcher and I want to get some research grade LSD to find out if it helps alcoholics kick the bottle, that's easier for me to get a hold of than medical cannabis.
Yeah, you have more options. You have more places that you can get it from. And for something like marijuana, it's even harder because marijuana is not a single substance. It's not something that's uniform. As all of your listeners know, and you know well, that relative levels of THC to CBD in the product, the different strains, the different parts of such a diverse product like cannabis, really requires not just multiple outlets to get that product from, but outlets that are sensitive to the reality that it's a diverse plant and there are needs to look at it from all of those diverse angles.
So this restriction on research, I mean, a lot of it has to be based in those international treaties that require certain scheduled drugs to have certain regulations. So how does our research into medical cannabis stack up against other nations that are also signatories to these same treaties? I mean, we've got to be the only ones making it this hard. Am I incorrect in saying that?
Yeah, you're pretty much incorrect in saying that. A lot of other countries are doing much more research on medical marijuana, on marijuana in general. The Drug Enforcement Administration uses the single conventions, the UN treaty that governs illegal or governs narcotics, as their defense, as their justification for why they allow one DEA-mandated, NIDA-approved farm at the University of Mississippi to supply the product. But the reality is that other Schedule 1 substances have multiple producers. It's not inconsistent with the single conventions to license other universities, other facilities to produce this product for research. It's just a convenient explanation or a convenient excuse for the government to use for stopping this type of research.
It's a shame. We're speaking with John Hudak, who's a co-author along with Grace Wallach from Brookings Institution on ending the U.S. government's war on medical marijuana research. You can find this online at brookings.edu. We'll post the link in our chat room. And John, another thing about this research is people will understand that the Schedule 1 designation says it has no medicinal value, it's got no safe use, it's a drug of abuse, and they'll argue, well then, all we need to do, lower that in the schedule, get it down to Schedule 2 or Schedule 3, and poof, everything's magically solved. Explain the difficulties in that line of thinking.
Yeah, so that's a real challenge. There are definite benefits if you want to conduct more research on marijuana by changing its place in the drug schedules. That's for sure. But it doesn't solve all of the problems. It doesn't break down all of the barriers that exist to do this type of research. It's not going to magically legalize marijuana. It's not even going to force states that have chosen not to legalize medical marijuana to do so. There are still burdens that exist, like in the study of any drugs. The difference, of course, is that marijuana is being prescribed all across, well, not all across the United States, but in 23 states in the District of Columbia. What I think a lot of people don't realize is 149 million Americans live in those states. And the official government line that marijuana has no medical value is not one that has been fleshed out by the medical community or the pharmaceutical community or the research science community. That's a designation that has been made by the United States Congress. And frankly, there aren't many answers from the United States Congress I trust, and I certainly don't trust them on the medicinal value of any product. I'd rather a researcher and a scientist tell me that answer.
Yeah, that one sounds like it came directly from the "We Said So" community. That's
exactly
about all we got there. Another aspect of medical marijuana when we're talking at the federal level that is maddening for a lot of people is understanding that we have this compassionate investigative new drug program upon which there are still 2 federal patients, Irv Rosenfeld and Elvie Musica, Elvie's out here in Oregon, Irv's in Florida, that are receiving tins of 8 to 9 ounces of that government marijuana every month for medical purposes. They've never been surveyed on it. They've never studied how this affected the 28 or so that ended up on the program at some point. Why couldn't this compassionate investigative new drug program just be reintroduced or reemphasized for, say, these kids with epilepsy that are getting the CBD oil or the cancer patients in these medical marijuana states?
Well, that's a good question. Grace and I talk about that program specifically in the paper, and it's important. That program is important for 2 purposes. One, it allows an administrative process, an institutional process in the federal government to get medical marijuana to people who the medical community believes it will help. But more important than that, it is an explicit endorsement by the federal government that there is some value to the use of this product in the treatment of certain conditions. And like you said, there are 2 patients currently using it. Historically, there have been other patients. Many of them have, of course, died of the illnesses for which they were being treated. But it's that endorsement. It is that inconsistency. This program cannot exist for a substance that is in Schedule 1. Why? Because the program explicitly says there's a medical value, so we're giving it to medical patients. And they're saying it about a substance that Schedule 1 says has no medicinal value. So there's an inconsistency there in federal policy, like there is on a variety of drug policies. But this puts it into the clearest of light. And I think it's a wake-up call, not from the activist community, not from researchers who, want to improve their CVs in their record in conducting research, but it's actually a statement by the federal government that, maybe there's some value here, and at least we should research it more.
That sounds good to me. And looking at the polls, it sounds good to a lot of Americans. We're seeing statewide polls now approaching 90%, and even supermajorities of older conservative Republicans in those polls in support for medical marijuana. So with that much momentum behind this movement, what's it going to take to enact actual change? What recommendations could you make that would move this ball forward?
Well, it's hard to understand policymakers and politicians who don't respond to polling numbers like that. Like you said, in some places, 90% support for medical marijuana. Nationally, it's somewhere around 80%. And that's not just individuals clustered in liberal California and liberal states in New England. You have majority support for medical marijuana in the Bible Belt, in the most conservative of places, in the states that offered the lowest amount of support for President Obama in 2012, for states that have congressional delegations that don't even have a Democrat in sight, in congressional delegations where Democrats don't even try. In the most conservative parts of the United States, you still have majority support for medical marijuana. It's a no-brainer. But for the policymaking community, for politicians to catch up with public opinion, that doesn't always happen with the right kind of timing. And so, frankly, at the end of the day, you need politicians with a little less cowardice and a little more responsiveness to a democratic system. I think we have some hints that politicians are more responsive. I think when you hear even the most ardent drug warriors running for president, like Chris Christie, they're fine with medical marijuana. They're just concerned about recreational marijuana. And so you see hints of this, but what you don't see is action. What you don't see is a federal government committed to the expansion of research for a product that's being prescribed in states that have 149 million Americans living in them, and that's a real problem.
Yes, and it's something that can't be ignored as we move forward in these elections. Ohio, in 11 days, is voting on a legalization proposal that would also create a medical marijuana system. And then looking to 2016, Nevada is already on the ballot for legalization. California is likely to be, and possibly 3 or 4 other states. Do you see a time coming soon that this will be addressed and will be making some move forward? I mean, politically, it looks like it's almost unstoppable.
Yeah, I think this president has faced a situation in which he felt he had to address it, and he addressed it in a variety of ways. Of course, the most prominent ones being through the Cole memos. But I think as more states come online with medical marijuana and recreational marijuana, the next president faces even more pressure, not just to give in to the public will, not just to deal with states that have sort of run rogue from the Controlled Substances Act, but to address this real inconsistency between federal and state law, and frankly, even inconsistency within federal law. One of my favorite anecdotes on this is if you travel down to 10th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C., on one side of the street you have the Department of Justice, the building from which James Cole issued his memos. And on the other side of the street you have the IRS. Well, the DOJ, the Department of Justice, says it's okay for marijuana enterprises to operate as long as they're consistent with the Cole memos. Across the street, the IRS considers those enterprises criminal entities. They're drug traffickers. They can't operate legally. So you can have one bureaucrat look out his window at another bureaucrat across the street, and they can say very different things about the same cannabis enterprise. That's not good public policy. No matter what you think about marijuana, no matter what you think about legalization, that's bad public policy, and it's something that the next president really has to address.
John Hudak, Ph.D., is a fellow at the Center for Effective Public Management and the managing editor of the FixGov blog there at the Brookings Institution. The paper's entitled Ending the U.S. Government's War on Medical Marijuana Research. Lots of great information. The paper is free. You can get it online at brookings.edu. John, thanks for being back here on the show. Always a voice of reason in a storm of insanity.
Russ, thanks for having me.
All right. And that's all the time I got for today. Thanks for joining us, podcast listeners. Stay tuned, live listeners, for Hour 2 coming up next. For everyone here in beautiful legal Potland, Oregon, I'm Radical Russ. Until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth.
You might be surprised to learn who has Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. Nearly 1 in 200 Americans are suffering with the debilitating pain and constant disruption of these inflammatory bowel diseases, or IBD. Chances are you know someone with IBD. For example, your neighbor or coworker. The Crohn's and Colitis Foundation was created to help patients cope and to find a cure. People with IBD can't wait. Won't you help someone you know? Visit www.escapethestall.com today.
Are you looking to hire someone